Okay, you can probably hear me now. Sorry about the no music. I didn't. I was talking to someone the whole time that was operating. So sorry about not turning the microphone on. But now you should have volume. So again, thanks for tuning in. If you are listening from Tennessee, it is a nice brisk evening. I think maybe today is the first day of fall. Somebody shoot me a message up there if it is actually the first day of fall. I think that was today. I don't really keep up with that very much. We're going to be in Luke chapter 10 tonight, verses 38 through 42. No music, got that, but you should have volume now. I'll do better on that next week. I will. Kind of a new system going on. I don't know. Most of you have probably never seen how things are set up here when we get ready to live stream. So I've kind of changed the system the last couple of weeks. So there's some new technology I'm trying to learn. And so tonight I made a mistake and didn't turn the microphone on, but I'll put a little note up here that says turn on mic, and I'll be able to do that and get that all worked out for you. So tonight there'll probably be some things that happen. I am, again, new technology, learning some different buttons that have to be pushed for different things, but I think we'll get it all worked out. I think it will be good. So tonight we are going to look at Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. It's a very interesting event in the life of Jesus. I'm sure you've read about it, you've heard about it. If you've read the Bible very much, it is where Jesus goes to the home of Mary and Martha. Martha is busy preparing a meal, basically fixing a dinner for Jesus. Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, and Martha is a little upset because I don't know what that text meant, but that Mary is not helping, so she asks Jesus to rebuke Mary, which he doesn't do. He rebukes Martha instead. It's a really great lesson in those section verses. We're going to spend tonight talking about that. Might actually spend next week talking about that as well. We'll just see how it goes. I don't want to be on here for hours, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes at the most. And we'll try to cover as much as we can. And then after we cover that, we will, again, we may finish it tonight. We may finish it next week. If you have questions, put them in the chat boxes on Facebook or the website, or you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. I'm trying to watch all of those, so kind of have all of those things going at the same time as well. And okay, so let's just kind of jump into the text, and we'll take off from there. So in Luke, this is Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. We'll also have to work on the lighting and some things still. I notice when I go to that particular view, I'm kind of fuzzy, but we'll get that worked out. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. And the text actually says he entered a village, but we know it was Jesus. So if you want to put Jesus in the text when you translate that, it probably helps the reader so that the reader doesn't have to try to figure out who he is. But so they're traveling together, and when they get to, this is going into the town of Bethany, and Bethany's not mentioned in Luke chapter 10, but we know that Mary and Lazarus and Martha lived in Bethany. So as he's going on their way, they enter this certain village, and the certain village is Bethany. And a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And that's the word it's used 3 or 4 times in the New Testament. It means to entertain somebody as a guest. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. And you can't really get this as much from an English translation, but the idea there is either she began listening or she was continuing to listen. The idea is there's instead of an event, maybe see it as a movie. So she's sitting there listening. And Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Then tell her to help me." But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. And Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. So, just a couple of things as we go into that. First is this idea of Bethany. A lot of things happened in Bethany. It's the home of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. It's where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. It's home of Simon the leper. We'll reference that in just a little bit in John chapter, I believe it's John chapter 12. We'll look at that in just a few minutes. And it's where Jesus ascended after his resurrection. Before the Passion Week, he spent time in Bethany. I have this video that I want to try to show you. See if I can pull it up on the screen and show you this video. It's, let's see. I think I can make this work. I am going to jump off of the screen for a second. And let's see if you can watch this video with me.
About 1.5 miles from Jerusalem, on the southeastern side of the Mount of Olives, sits the ancient location of the village of Bethany. A 2,000-year-old dwelling place and tomb are located here that since the early 300s were identified as the home of Jesus' friends Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Bethany was the place in which Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. The tomb from which he was called forth exists today, and one can descend into its cave and view the place where the dead came back to life. Bethany is also the location where Jesus, who was in the home of Simon the leper, was approached by a woman named Mary. She anointed Jesus' feet with expensive perfume and wept before him, drying his feet with her hair. Bethany is also the place from which Jesus departed to enter Jerusalem. This act is known as his triumphal entry and is commemorated with the church tradition of Palm Sunday. Short days later, Jesus would die on a cross for the sins of mankind. It was also near Bethany that Jesus would ascend into heaven after his resurrection. Today, Bethany is a part of the Arab city El Itzariah, but its roots heavily touch the life of Jesus. One of his greatest miracles happened here. And even though the resurrection of Lazarus shows Jesus' godly nature, the same miracle also shows the beautiful humanity of Jesus. The shortest verse in the Bible happens in Bethany. Jesus wept.
All right, so as we look at that, again, a couple of really important things happened in Bethany. Sorry about, hang on just a second. Let me fix the screen again. For some reason, it does not stay the way that I want it to. And again, I'll try to figure that out. All right. So the question I have for you tonight is are you more like Mary or are you more like Martha? And to be very honest, if I were to answer this for myself, I think most of the time I'm probably more like Martha. And I wish I would be a little bit more like Mary. You have two very unique women in this story in Luke chapter 10. So Martha is usually, maybe she's the older sister. It seems somewhat that way because she's mentioned first many times. Mary has this unique insight into the ministry of Jesus, and we'll look at that a little bit as we go through the lesson too. So there is Martha, who is this hard-working, lady who's trying to put everything together to make everything just exactly right for Jesus. And sometimes that is us. We're very hardworking people. We're very focused on an action or an activity. We're very focused on a particular ministry, something that has to be done. And then you have Mary, who is just so happy just to sit in the presence of Jesus, to listen to his teaching, and to learn so much more about him. And so you have in this section of Jesus' life in Luke chapter 10, you have this incredible story about when Jesus came into their house, and this interaction between what Martha is doing for Jesus, and she's trying to serve him to make sure, I think what she's trying to do is make sure he has the perfect meal. And then you have Mary, who is sitting at the feet of Jesus. You have Martha, who wants Mary to get up and help. And Jesus, who let's just go through the story. It's a great event in the life of Jesus. So when you come to Bethany, he comes to the house of Mary and Martha, and we know from other texts that Lazarus was their brother. He was, he's not mentioned in this particular instance in the life of Jesus. Maybe he was there. It only says that Jesus and Mary and Martha were present. I don't know if the other disciples had left and gone a different direction. They went on their way. They're all traveling together. It says he entered a village, and a woman came and welcomed him into her house. The narrative focuses in on Jesus. It doesn't necessarily mean that none of the other disciples went, or that none of the other disciples were there, or maybe all of the disciples were there. It's not mentioned that way because that's not what is important to the lesson. What's important to the lesson is that there is Martha, Mary, and Jesus. So the way Luke writes it, those are the three people in the narrative that he has who are present in the house. Whether other people are present or not, I don't have any idea. The text doesn't say. And again, it doesn't really matter for what we're trying to look at this morning. So put yourself in. We're going to try to get into maybe the mind of Mary and Martha just a little bit, and Jesus a little bit, even though it's not really recorded in the text. But think of a situation where somebody that maybe it's somebody that you really like. Maybe it's somebody important, because Martha is painted as this incredible hostess as you look at the first part of this lesson. So maybe it is, what would you do if somebody that you consider to be an important guest were coming to your house? I mean, somebody that you thought was really important. And Jesus had this really, it almost seems he had this really unique relationship with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. I just get the impression that, he could go into their house, go into their presence, and he could just be himself. He could, not that Jesus needed a particular place to do that, but he could relax. He's away from the crowd. He's with people who love him. He's with people who care about him. It's almost as if he's with family. So if you had somebody who was really important come into your house, what would you do? I mean, if somebody really important were coming to our house, to Diane and I's house, I'd probably make sure I had everything cleaned up. Right? You straighten up, you make sure, it's probably not a great analogy, but it reminds me of people when we have small groups and they host a small group, when the small group comes into your house, it's really difficult to host a small group because not only you're trying to make sure that maybe there's food there or proper arrangements, but everything has to be picked up, everything has to be straight. You want them to come into a kind of a clean, spotless type of house. So, maybe you clean the house up, or what if they're coming to dinner? I mean, maybe you have a really close friend that's coming to your house for dinner, and what types of things would you do? I mean, you'd want the best meal, you'd want things just right. You'd be scrambling around trying to make sure that every need that they had was taken care of, that every little thing that they wanted was done. And so Jesus comes into Bethany, comes into a certain village. Luke doesn't tell it's Bethany, but I'm sure it's Bethany. And Martha invites him to her house. Now, if they met somewhere on the street. I don't know if they met in the marketplace, if she just knew that Jesus was coming and she sent a messenger. She went out to meet him. Don't know how she knew he was there. Don't know how the invitation came, but Martha welcomes Jesus into her house. And in this narrative, she is scrambling around trying to get everything ready. She's preparing, evidently, this maybe a meal for Jesus. That's kind of, it doesn't specifically say a meal, but that's the impression I get. She's scrambling around trying to make sure that Jesus' needs are taken care of. Now, you can imagine, just put yourself for a second in Martha's world. She's scrambling around, and there's her sister, probably her younger sister. Text never says that, but probably her younger sister is just sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to Jesus teach. And typically, in a lot of ways, the way that would work is there would be a couch. It's not a couch like we think of a couch, but kind of a raised platform, maybe a couple of feet. It's usually backed up against a wall, doesn't have a back on it. Jesus probably would be sitting on that couch, probably cross-legged, and Mary probably sitting on a rug on the floor. Maybe the other disciples around, maybe not, doesn't matter. But Mary is sitting at the feet, listening to Jesus, talking with Jesus, and Martha is trying to get everything ready. So put yourself in Martha's world for just a second, and you think, why doesn't she get up and help? Why doesn't she do something? Why didn't she anything at all that she could do to help? And I kind of get this impression in my head that probably maybe Martha would maybe she'd rattle a couple of dishes. I just think what I would do in this situation. I'd probably rattle a couple of dishes. I'd probably clang some stuff together, try to get Mary's attention. Hey, there's some stuff going on here. I'd probably, maybe look inside the room or look around the corner, or maybe make a loud noise, a sigh, maybe walk through the room and look at her and think, maybe by just eye contact, she knows you're supposed to get up and help me. But Mary doesn't do, she's just sitting there. And the text never says Martha did any of those things. That's just kind of what I imagine in my mind. But she's obviously busy trying to get ready. She's distracted, it says, with much serving. It's reading from the let me get that text up there. I'm reading from the English Standard Version, and it says, but Mary was distracted right here, but Martha was distracted with much serving. And I think that's really interesting because it says she was, the word that is used for serving there is a word that we translate in other places of the New Testament that means ministry. She's busy with serving, and ministry is serving. That's the connection between those two. But it makes me think of churches. And the reason it makes me think of churches is that you have these churches and we're so busy with ministry. We're so busy with doing things. We're so busy with program. We're distracted with ministry. And that's the impression I get of Martha here. She is just so distracted of trying to make sure that everything is exactly right for Jesus. And then here's Mary just sitting and listening. And I am sure that if I were in Martha's position, the longer that went, the more annoyed I would be. And the more noise that I made, or the more that I felt like I needed help and she's not willing to help, then the more aggravated I would have been. And before very long, I'd have been extremely aggravated at Mary because I'm doing all the work and she's just sitting there listening. Well, finally it gets to Martha, doesn't it? Finally it just gets to that point that she has to say something. So she says, and so she went up to him, and the word there is kind of almost like this. She just suddenly went up to him, or it could either mean that she suddenly went up to Jesus, or it could mean that she. Have you ever been in a conversation and somebody wanted to say something to you, and they would come up to the conversation that you were having, and they would just stand there, and they're waiting for a break, waiting for a time that they can get a word in. And so it could mean that she came up suddenly and interrupted, or it could mean, I mean, the word's a little vague, it could mean that she was just standing there waiting for an opportunity to be able to say the thing that she wanted to say that was bugging her so much. And she said, Lord, don't you care? I mean, that's just kind of a statement against Jesus. And don't you even care that my sister has left me alone? We translate it to serve. It would be okay in English to say, my sister left me alone to do all the work. And tell her to get up and help. Tell her to help me. And the Lord said, Martha, you're anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary, and Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. And I think there's an incredible lesson right there. And we'll just kind of explore this as we go through. Let me check the time, make sure we're all right. Jesus has this really gentle admonition to Mary. And it's kind of a reminder that we serve other people. See, this idea of serving others with humility has been all the way through Jesus' ministry. And even the disciples aren't getting it. I mean, it's not just that Martha doesn't get it. The disciples aren't getting it. I mean, just a few days after this, not very long at all, month and a half at the most, there's this situation where Jesus, one of his last acts with the disciples is he washes their feet. They're arguing about who's the greatest, and he gets up and washes their feet. None of them did what was just normal hospitality. They didn't get up and wash each other's feet, or they didn't even wash Jesus' feet, right? Jesus gets up and washes their feet to show them what service with humility looked like. And it's a difficult lesson for the disciples to learn. It's a difficult lesson for Martha to learn, and it's a really difficult lesson for us to learn, that we go and we serve other people with humility. When you think about what Martha is doing here, she's doing something. She starts out doing something, at least with the very best of intention. Jesus has come into Bethany. He's been on a trip. He's probably hungry. He needs to be taken care of. She invites him into his house. Hospitality is a wonderful thing. Feeding Jesus, if that's what she was doing, caring for Jesus, that's a wonderful work. I mean, what she is doing, everything about what she is doing as she's trying to serve, that part is actually good. What's rebuked here is not that she's trying to serve, I don't think. What is being and it's not like Jesus is saying, well, you don't need to do anything either, Martha. You just come sit down. The idea here is that she's so distracted by what's happening. She's so distracted by her service. She's so distracted by her ministry that she misses the opportunity just to spend time with Jesus. And there's this idea of serving other people with humility, and that happens to us sometimes, because what happens is we start off trying to do a really good thing. We start off with really good solid intentions, and then somebody else doesn't respond exactly the way that we think they ought to respond, or we don't get the help that we think we should get. We don't get as many. And it's not that we're looking for praise. We're just looking for somebody to show up and help. And we're not getting the support that we think that we need. And we're doing all of the work, and somebody else is standing around doing something else. And it's that self-centered pride sometimes that just can kind of, it subtly corrupts the pure intentions of our servant heart. I mean, it's like this pride comes to play, and it corrupts even the very best of our actions, because she's not doing a bad thing. She's waiting on Christ. Maybe she's waiting on other guests. She's got the best motive. I think Martha has absolutely the best of intentions, which even when Jesus rebukes her, it seems like he does it in such a grandfather type of way. But things like anger and resentment and jealousy and distrust and being judgmental and being unkind. I mean, when it, I don't know if it's just Jesus, Mary, and Martha in the house, or if there are other people there, but when Martha does this, it's not like she's worried about Mary's feelings or about what Mary might think or how it might affect Mary. She just comes out and says, why don't you tell her to get up and help? And, but there is this, again, what Martha's trying to do is good. She just gets distracted by all of the things, and she doesn't make the best choice. And Martha, in looking at Mary and Mary not getting up to help, I think she really failed to recognize Mary's depth of understanding and her incredible love for Jesus. I mean, so you have Martha who's scattering around and scurrying around and trying to make sure everything is just right. You know, that maybe the table's set right, the candle's in the right place, the glasses are in the right place, the food's prepared properly. You know, Jesus is comfortable. He has everything that he needs. And then you have Mary, who is just so enthralled to be in the presence of Jesus that she's just sitting there soaking up, just listening, and the idea is that she's continually doing this, that she's listening to everything that Jesus has to say. And you get to other events in Jesus' ministry. I mean, if you go over to John chapter 12, we'll look at that really quick. And it's Mary who anoints Jesus at Bethany. I mean, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came back to Bethany, and Lazarus was there, who Jesus had raised from the dead, and they gave a dinner for them. And this is in Simon's house. We find out from other passages. I don't know what the connection between Simon the leper and Mary, and a lot of speculation about that. But Mary takes, in verse 3 here, Mary takes a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and she anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. And Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, who was about to betray him, said, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? And he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and having charge of the money bag. He used to help himself to what was put into it. But listen to what Jesus says. Jesus says, leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you always have with me, but you do not always have me. And there's this instance right there in the life of Jesus that Mary has this insight, it seems, into what Jesus is getting ready to do. And it doesn't seem like any of the other disciples have it. So Mary, I mean, she's got this depth of understanding, this incredible love for Jesus. And it makes me ask this question. Does your heart for others define your service? I mean, because Martha, one of the issues here with Martha in this small, I mean, I think it's a small conflict, this small conflict that she has with Mary, and this gentle rebuke from Jesus, at least I see it to be gentle, is that in all of her busyness and all of her doing the things, what she misses is seeing the incredible heart that her sister has for Jesus. How, she's so focused on getting help, and so focused on Mary getting up to help her, and so focused on Mary being a part of what she's involved in, that she misses the fact that what Mary does have is this incredible heart for Jesus. So she's kind of thinking of herself instead of thinking about what her sister needs. And there's this challenge that we have, and I just titled it the challenge of undistracted. Remember what Jesus said, Martha, you're anxious and you're troubled. You worked yourself up into a frenzy about many things. And it's hard for us to be in a situation where we're not distracted, to be in an undistracted scenario. It's really hard for me. I mean, I'll just confess. So when I sit here and I'm studying, so if you were sitting in here with me looking, you would see 3 computer screens. So if I am sitting here and I'm trying to do a Bible study and I have something on all three of those screens and I'm sitting here at the computer, it's very easy for me to get distracted. I'll look at something on the internet, or hey, what's happening in the news, or what's happening with the stock market, or I wonder if I got an email, and I flip, I go over to the email program, and you're bouncing around between different programs. But sometimes you need to turn all of that off and be very focused, very still. Maybe you just get out a Bible. Maybe sometimes reading the Bible on your phone isn't the best thing to do unless you turn a do not disturb on or something similar to that, because you get so many interruptions you can't stay focused on the thing that you're supposed to stay focused on, to stay in an undistracted frame of mind. And even in churches, we run into that because service doesn't define worship. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to tell Martha. There's service, Martha, and then there's worship. And worship is a higher priority than service. And doing ministry must never supersede worship. Now, I want to talk about that for just a second, if you'll let me, if you'll stay tuned in for this, because I think that is a struggle for churches. When we come, let's just take a Sunday morning. Let's just take a Clarksville Highway Sunday morning, since that's... if you're not from Clarksville Highway, just follow along with the conversation, okay? So you come in on Sunday morning, there are Bible classes that have to be taught. Somebody has to prepare for that Bible class. Somebody has to have the ministry of teaching that class. There's communion that has to be set up, and Shaw does a wonderful job with that. I know he doesn't want a pat on the back, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Somebody has to come in and prepare that communion so it's there for people. Somebody has to get the Bible classes ready. Somebody has to have Bible teachers in place, and Cheryl does that for the younger kids. Jeff does it for the teens. Right now we only have one adult class, so that's me. We'll have two adult classes. Jeff Butler teaches a class. So we have those things going on. Somebody has to put all that together. Somebody has to be ready for children's worship. Somebody has to be ready to take care of the nursery. If somebody has to run the sound system, somebody has to do the video feed, and Reggie's back there, Travis is back there helping. Somebody's leading singing, somebody's leading a prayer, somebody is sharing communion thoughts. The point is, on any Sunday morning, you have all of these things going on at one time that are ministry. I mean, just in worship. And then outside of that, you have different ministries, different things happening, different people being helped. You have all of these things going on, and sometimes in doing ministry, we forget why we are doing ministry. We're more like Martha, where we're scurrying around and we're trying to get everything set up and we're trying to get everything just right. And I think Jesus would stop and say, hey, you know what? Only one thing is necessary. The thing that Mary's doing, worshiping me, listening to me. See, so maybe I can say it this way. We come to worship God together, and in worshiping God, listening to his word, growing close to Jesus, becoming more like Jesus, encouraging one another to be more like Jesus, just basking in the relationship that we have in Jesus. And if we get so busy taking care of all of the details and doing all of the ministry things that go on around that we miss the reason that we're doing all of the ministry things, which is the worship of Jesus and becoming more like him and putting our focus on him. We can get so busy with all the peripherals that we forget to focus on Jesus. So when you get to this situation with Mary and Martha, I think that's exactly what's happening. Martha's so busy trying to make everything just right, trying to be a servant, that she misses what Mary is doing, which is just simply relishing her relationship with Jesus, listening to his word, listen to his teaching, becoming more like him. And so when Martha says, hey, she needs to get up and help, Jesus says, no, Martha, she's chosen the good thing. Now, does that mean that somebody didn't need to prepare a meal or get things ready? Some have argued that some think that the one thing is necessary, that Jesus was telling Martha, well, we only needed one course of meal, not all of this stuff that you're fixing, so you've done too much. And I think that misses the point. I see where they're coming from sometimes. When you ever been to somebody's house where they just, I mean, literally fix more than you could ever eat. But I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about. He said the one thing that's necessary is listening to me and listening to my word. So you can't get so caught up in the ministry and getting everything prepared that you forget the reason that you were there, which is simply just to sit in the presence of Jesus. See, I think many times I'm more like Martha when I need to be more like Mary. You know, maybe everything doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, or maybe in our scrambling around, we need to slow down and stop and remember, why is it that we're doing the things that we're doing? Maybe we have to stop and step back from that, and we look at a particular program, and it's not like the program is not good or the ministry is not good. I mean, they are good, but you step back from that for a moment and remember, why is it that we are doing those things? We're doing those things so that we can experience the transforming power of Jesus. And if we're so busy doing those things that we miss the transforming power, then we've missed the purpose of being together. Now, does that mean the church doesn't need all of those things done? No, all of those things usually need to be done. Okay, I mean, if there are a lot of things that go on to try to help the church function properly, but remember why we are doing those things. So I think one lesson is we kind of step back, maybe, and we kind of look at things from a different perspective, and maybe the thing that we are most excited about is when people are experiencing the presence of Jesus. Maybe, you know, I wonder what would have happened if instead of Martha becoming frustrated because she couldn't get Mary to help, that as Mary was doing those different things around the house, whatever it was that she was doing, whether it was tidying things up or fixing a meal, if she just looked at Mary, if Martha just looked at Mary and said, you know what? You know, Mary really needs to spend that time with Jesus, and I'm really excited that she's getting that time to sit at the feet of Jesus and discuss with him and talk with him and learn from him. You know, her attitude about saying, hey, you need to make sure she gets up and helps, it might have been different. So one lesson is that we just put the needs of other people above ourselves. The second lesson is that we just don't get so involved, and I like it when Luke uses the word, she's distracted with much serving. She's distracted with much ministry, that we don't become so distracted with the ministry that we forget the reasons that we are doing the ministry, that we remember just take time to sit in the presence of Jesus. So Martha and Mary, Jesus comes to town, and he comes to eat, he comes to share, he comes to the house of what I think in the text would rightfully be called some of his very best friends. Martha wants everything to be just right, and you can understand that, can't you? I mean, you can understand the perspective that Martha's coming from. If somebody that we really thought a lot of was coming to our house, we would want everything to be just right. But in all of her scurrying around while her sister was listening to Jesus, she was missing the best thing, which was just to be in his presence. So the challenge is that we don't get anxious and troubled about things that are less important, and we become more focused on the relationship that we have with Jesus, whether that is personal in the way that we do things. You know, maybe we are so distracted and troubled that we don't find time to listen to Jesus or pray to Jesus or spend time with Jesus or spend time on spiritual things. Maybe we need to step back from a lot of things that are going in life and remember, I don't need to be as anxious and troubled about some of the things as I am. I need to step back and remember my relationship with Jesus. Maybe it's not just personal relationship. Maybe it's also just church stuff. I mean, you just really, you got to step back and remember what it means to come into the presence of God and worship and just spend time with Jesus. I just encourage you, Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, spend some time just reading those verses and thinking, am I more like Martha or am I more like Mary? Now here's the incredible thing I think about this passage. both of those women were great servants of Jesus. You know, that you need Martha times where there are things that need to be done. There are things that need to be taken care of. Just to need to remember why we're doing those things. And there are Mary moments when we just need to stop and sit and just bask in the presence of Jesus. So anyway, I hope you little insight into those verses. Hope you spend some time reading those and looking at those. So we will be back Sunday morning to live stream. Jeff Goldtrap will be teaching class and preaching, but class will start at 9 o'clock and worship will start at 10 o'clock. Both of those will be live streamed on all of those platforms, so you can watch those there. And hey, I hope you have a great evening. Talked a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.